I'm well excited that you have joined me again to have this conversation. I mean, this conversation would not happen if it's only me. So thank you so much for taking your time to join me on here. And also wanted to use this opportunity to say thank you so much for all the support, all the kind words. I mean, it's quite overwhelming, and I thank you all. So what I wanted to talk about today actually derived from a conversation that I had with my not so little cousin. I used to call her little because I've always seen her little. I'm stuck in this, I don't know if you do that. You know, when you see somebody who you have known in the past and they've always been little, and you always think that they will be little for some reason. It's the same thing with my cousin, but when she hit 30, I decided to drop the little and call her my very dear cousin. So we were having a conversation actually around the previous podcast. It sort of triggered something in me, and I decided to pick the mic so that we can have this Untold conversation. And it's around the subject of how people feel uncomfortable when you make reference to God and when you make reference to the Bible and scriptures. And I thought, you know, since this is the Untold and we're bringing everything behind the scenes to the front end of things, I thought it would be quite educative and also quite interesting if we do talk about stuff that really makes us uncomfortable. So what underpinned this conversation is the fact that we realized that in this generation, a lot of people are turning away from Christianity. In this day and age, when you mention the Bible, the scriptures, it makes certain people feel very uncomfortable. I just want to get real here. I do believe that, especially in our generation or in today's world, I feel like people are sort of turning away from Christianity. There are a lot of contributing factor. There's a lot of contributing factor to it. But one of the things that I've ascertained is the fact that there are a lot of myths and traditions and rules that have been passed down from generation to generation. And when you sort of decide to look into this myths and traditions, you find out that it doesn't add up, if I can put it that way. It doesn't add up. And another thing as well that I want to mention is that I feel like a lot of people shy away from Christianity because I honestly genuinely believe that it's been put forward as though it's a religion. And that's what I mean by things do not add up. And every time you have religion attached to anything, the first thing that comes into your head is rules and regulations. And I mean, I'm using this thing very simply and not to really dive into it. And when there comes rules and when there comes regulation, also comes expectation. And I feel like people are shying away from Christianity now because of these expectations. Now, the reason why I say these things don't add up, because these expectations, when you look into them, they are man-made at a core. They have nothing to do or reflect what the scriptures are saying. So what you have in today's society are people that think they are Christians, but they're not. And not forgetting that there are people that are surrounding them who perhaps haven't made up their mind that they want to be a Christian, and they're looking at these individuals in the circle, whether it's in the neighborhood or whether it's in the workplace or whether it's in your family. And they are looking upon these individuals and they're saying that, whoa, this is not for me if this is what Christianity is about, okay? And I feel like because these expectations that has been put to the front because of these expectations that have been put to the front, because they're man-made, they have no foundation. They literally have no foundation. What I mean by foundation is the spiritual pillars that hold the principles in God's word. And the scripture tells us that everything will pass away by God. So if you find expectations are not being met, if you find expectation keeps changing, depending on what church you go to, these expectations are not necessarily the spiritual principles or spiritual keys that are found in the Bible. And what we find in our society today is man-made expectations that are being sort of passed down from generation to generation. And the people from the outside are looking into this community or the Christian community and realizing that, hold on, these expectations, perhaps they feel like they can't meet it themselves. They feel like these expectations are quite scary, they're quite daunting. These expectations would literally turn their lives upside down. I mean, I'm using these words very loosely. I mean, there are so many contributing factors, but I honestly believe that majority of the reason why people shy away from Christianity is because of these man-made expectations. And another contributing factor that I want to chip in here as well is the fact that if you're going to be passing down like traditions or myth, and then see, let me just take you back for a second. We are at the generation where information and knowledge is our disposal. I mean, at a click of a finger, I could find any information that I want. Okay, so we're not in the times or in the ages where information are sort of hidden from us, so to speak. Okay, and unfortunately, if we find ourselves in communities where traditions have been passed down or myths that has been passed down, and it's not explained to our generation, this particular generation, you will find that this generation would turn away. And not necessarily turn away because they want to turn away. They turn away because these things that have been passed down to them does not make sense. And the roots of it all is the fact that people are still putting Christianity forward as though it's a religion. And the younger generation or this generation, we are, how can I put this? We're naturally made as a sponge, okay? And we want to absorb every information that we can, whether negative or whether positive, okay? And it's our responsibility as parents, as guidance, as godmothers, as godfathers, to ensure that anybody who has been put in our care or anybody who is in our circle of friends, in our neighborhood or workplace, wherever we find our space, it's our responsibility, so to speak, that we feed these people with good knowledge, with positive knowledge, and not merely passing down traditions and not myths that doesn't make sense. Because what you will find is the fact that they would ask questions. Okay, why do you do this? Why do you do that? Okay, gone are the days where you can just say something to a child with no explanation, with no understanding, and the child would just follow suit. Nowadays, when you say something, they want to know the reason behind it, and they want to understand why it's done in a certain way. Now, because there's a gap of generation where they've also followed suit on traditions and followed suit on myths that doesn't make sense. When you go back and ask them, why do you do this? Why did you do that? They don't understand. First of all, it's because they've been passed down rules and regulation. They've been passed down series of rituals that perhaps they don't understand. So they couldn't provide answers to the younger generation or to this generation. So you find that this generation are turning to things that it makes sense to them, whether it's good or bad, they tend to things that make sense to them, whether it's science, science, they turn to science, they turn to, I don't know, the simple, whatever makes sense to the child or whatever makes sense to this generation, it's where we will turn to, right? Now, if there's a generation, 1, 2, or 3, that are carrying on doing things that they themselves don't know, then you're going to have a gap of generation where they are turning away because they don't want to follow suit, or they don't want to follow things that doesn't make sense to them, if I can put it that way. Okay, so I generally think that people are turning away from, or they shy away from Christianity, not because they want to, but it's because the information and the knowledge is not there. It's not there. And instead of it being the knowledge they need, it's expectation of man, and like I said, if you pass down these expectation of man, I can bet you 100% I will Google it. The younger generation would Google it. The younger generation would, information, it's so easily accessible with the internet age now, that as a parent, as a godparent, as a guide, you cannot afford to teach your children or to teach or evangelize in this generation without understanding what you're saying, or with not in, I can't even get the words out. You cannot evangelize in this generation with not understanding what you're saying or what you believe in. It's not good enough for you to come and tell somebody in this generation that they are sinners. What makes them a sinners? And it's not about what you've heard or what you have been told. Show it to them, prove it to them, show them the understanding, let it make sense to them. Let it make sense to them. And for me, it's sad. It's sad because when you really sit down and have a conversation with your inner man, when you sit down and decide to really go about this journey, and find out the reason why you are on this earth, to find out the reason what your purpose are, when you genuinely decide to pick the Bible, when you genuinely want to know your business on earth, you find out that these things that have been passed down has got nothing to do with it. And for me, what I have personally sort of observed is that the people that are victims of, carrying on these myths and stuff, they get to a point where they fall off the train. We will all fall off the train. Don't get me wrong. We will all slip. We will all fall. But there are certain people can't get back up. They can't get back up because wherever they were building on was not on solid grounds. Whatever they were building on was not on solid grounds. And also in this generation, nobody is going to adhere to rules and regulation that doesn't make sense to them. You're asking them to change who they are, or you're asking them to commit to something, and they want understanding. They want knowledge. And you must be prepared to able to give and supply this knowledge. But one of the major things that I've discovered, that Christianity actually is a way of life. It's a way of life. And the Bible is simply, or the scriptures are simply, spiritual principles and spiritual keys on how to live your life on this earth. It highlights the fact that you are a spiritual being having a human experience on this earth. So as a spiritual being having a human experience on this earth, there are principles, there are laws that you ought to know that exist in this planet thing called Earth. Say, for instance, if you traveled out of the country, there are laws that governs that country, and when you step out of those laws, you find yourself in a predicament. It's the same thing with this thing called life. There are laws that governs life, and these laws are basically spiritual principles and spiritual keys in the Bible. And I honestly felt like I was doing myself a massive disfavor not knowing these laws. It's almost like living in a country and not knowing that murder is it's against the law, or stealing is against the law, or what else is against the law. You know, all those things that we know are laws. You know, another way of looking at it is also it's like a manual. You know, when you get a product from our superstores, and especially the women, if I can put it that way, one of the first thing that we do is we pick up this manual and we want to know how this product works. We want to know how we can put these products together. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. The scriptures or the Bible is basically a human manual. I don't know if you ever had experience. I'm so guilty of this. I'm so guilty. I mean, up until today, I still do it. When I get something from IKEA, the most boring part of it is I have to read the manual. And for me, it's boring because then I have to take my time to understand what piece go where. And, you know, I feel it's just so boring for me. So what then I tend to do is I use my own mind to put this to put this product together. And for me, 99.9% of the time, what happens is I haven't put the fixtures properly. I mean, as I'm talking to you, the desk I'm sitting at is from IKEA. And when I tell you that the desk is wobbly, you won't believe me, because I chose not to follow the manual. So this desk is wobbly, you know, and I feel like if I don't hold it in a certain way, this whole thing could just collapse on me. And that it's because I not refused, but then didn't think it was useful for me to follow the principles in the manual. So therefore, I'm not getting the best use of this desk as it can possibly provide for me. So the other trouble that we face is the fact that when we read these manual or these spiritual principles and spiritual keys in these and in the Bible, we don't understand them. So there's a whole block of generation that have read these spiritual principles and spiritual keys. And whether it's done intentionally or it's not done intentionally, that's another conversation for another time. But they have been translated to suit man. They have been translated to suit man's idea. They have been translated to suit society, not at the core of what the principles are. And that's where this whole expectation derives from. The expectations of man derives from, because they've probably read the scriptures and translated to suit themselves, or to suit the notion, or to suit the idea that they have. And that is what is being passed down. And because it has no principles, not principle, because it has no spiritual pillars, right? The God-given spiritual pillars, it does not stand. It always shakes. It always shakes. See, but the word of God says something different. It says that the word of God does not shake. It's unshakable. So when these expectations are shakeable, when these things are going back and forth, and there isn't really any sort of solution to these expectations, one thing that I ask myself, one thing I actually do is I pick up the Bible, hear what they're saying, read my scriptures. Does it collate to what the scriptures are saying? No, it doesn't. Okay, I put it on the back bin. If it does, okay, see how I see then how I can put or apply that into my life. But what you find that there's a whole block of generation that have passed down notions and ideas of man that are not in line in scriptures. and people are running away from that because it's not in line with it. And you know what? It's really, really, really sad. It's so sad that in this generation, some of us are turning away from the scope of understanding what it means to be a Christian or the community of Christianity, because of these man-made expectations. So most people believe that there is God and this world didn't just exist on its own. Most people believe that. I know there are a certain percentage that will beg to differ, but majority of us believe that there is God. Now, if there is God and he created the world, wouldn't he also create a manual in terms of how this thing called planet Earth works? But what we're saying is there is. So why don't we want to find out how this earth works? Yeah, going back to what we was talking about in regards to why you're here in the first place. I'm sure at one point in everybody's life, we've asked ourselves, who am I? What am I doing on this earth? What's my reason for resistance, so on and so forth. And I guess in my quest to quench my thirst, I realized that there was something bigger than the life that I was living. I understood that the reason why I'm here now in this dispensation, the reason why I'm here now in this dispensation, in this age, it had to be bigger than my Monday to Friday 9-to-5 job. It had to be bigger than that. It really had to, because when it hits Monday, I cannot wait till Friday. And when the weekend finally comes, I'm looking forward to when I can next go on holiday. And even when I'm at work and it's 9 o'clock, I can't wait till it hits 5. And surely, and I know most of us have this experience in our lives. And I just thought, there has to be something bigger than this. There has to be. There must be something greater. There must be something greater than just breathing air in my lungs. There must be a reason why I'm here now. And in my quest to quench my thirst, I found out that in order to answer these questions, or get closer to answering these questions, is to connect to the manufacturer. Again, that's only if you believe that there is something greater, there's something bigger than the life you're living now. In order to find out the purpose or the greater understanding of why I exist, that is buried inside of me, is to connect to the manufacturer, who have made me, who has designed me. And surely he must have a reason why he designed me. He must have a reason why he chose that I will be here in this very age or this very day. So if he has designed me, if he has made me, and if I am his product, there must be a reason. There must be a reason why I'm here. There must be a reason why he chose me to be here. So if I want to discover why he's made me one, and why I'm here at this time, or why am I a mother or a father to this particular child, or why he chose me to come through this family line, or why he chose me to be in this workplace for this particular time in my life, or in this church, or to be in this neighborhood in this particular time in my life. There must be a reason. And it's all not just coincidence. And to find out that you must be connected to the person who orchestrated all of this in the first place. I believe that we all have a Apple product, whether it be an iPhone, I don't know, iPhone, Macs, whatever it is. And I believe when Steve Jobs was creating his product, he had intentions, or he had a purpose of what he wanted his products to be used for. Okay. And to get the best out of your iPhone, to get the best out of your Mac, it just makes sense to find out. You go on the Apple side to find out, oh, what can my iPhone do, or what can my Mac do, or what can my iPod do, or what can my, you want to know, you want to get the best out of the product. You want to get the best out of the product. Just the other day, I found out different ways of taking pictures with my iPhone, and I was amazed, and I didn't realize that the iPhone could do that. And it's the same thing with our lives. It's the same thing with our lives. For me to get the best out of my life and discover the greatness that lies in me, I needed to connect to the person who created the greatness in the first place. And it's a journey that one has to take. It's a journey that one has to make up their mind that this is what I want to discover. And it got to a point for me where I got frustrated. I got frustrated because all these things that have been said to me in terms of what it means to be a Christian at a certain point didn't make sense. It didn't add up for me, because there were still things that was happening in my life. Then I didn't understand why it was happening in my life. And I had to find out. I had to find out, what is this? Was I made to come and suffer on earth? Was I made to just endure afflictions? Surely not. Surely not. Was I made to just hassle? Surely not. So for me, it got to a point where there's a phrase in the Bible where they say that you have to be restless in your rest to be able to get up. So until you find yourself restless in your comfort zone, until you find yourself restless in the position that you're in right now, you won't be able to find out that greatness that lies in you. And going back to Steve Jobs, in terms of his idea or intent or purpose behind his creation, he would hope that all his consumers are using his product in accordance with his purpose. I mean, you wouldn't expect to see someone using an iPhone for cooking, for instance. And let me just get real here 1 second as well, if I may. When you see these things on Instagram or Facebook where they are testing the durability of the iPhones and stuff, or they're testing these things with the phones, and they're smashing them and they're brand new phones. I mean, I'm not even the person who created them, but then anytime I look at it, I get so, what's the word? I don't cringe, but I get so disappointed that, you buy a new phone and you just smash it because you want to know how durable these phones are. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Or you buying a table, for instance, and sleeping on the table. The table wasn't made for you to sleep on, so on and so forth. And what they tend to miss in these information that have been passed down is the fact that Christianity is, of course, a lifestyle which enables the creator's creations to experience life in a manner that they ought to experience life, you know. And in this walk of life, you realize that it is not you that have made yourself. There is somebody greater than you. And it's incredibly sad when you find out that people shy away or people feel uncomfortable when you're talking about Christianity. And when you dive into the reasons why, it's all because of lack of knowledge, or because of these expectations that they've placed on themselves as Christians, or these expectations that they are judging from the outside. It's incredibly sad. It's sad because it's robbing people from the truth. It's robbing people from the truth. And it's incredibly sad because of the truth that they rob of people. And I'm still on the journey, but I could confidently say that the truth was stolen away from me as well. I say that because, you know, when you're in the quest of answering the questions about life, you know, why you exist, so on and so forth, why you're here, who you are, and all those things. I guess what you will call it as soul searching. One thing that I found in my search is that the people that I felt that have gone ahead of me, they had one thing in common amongst them. And that thing was they knew about these spiritual principles and spiritual keys. And not only did they know about it, they understood it, and they applied it to their lives, you know. And hence why I felt like they understood life, you know. They were making wealth, so on and so forth. And I felt like there was an invisible line that was created, and in my search it felt like it was created intentionally to keep me sort of below that line, below that I guess invisible line. And below that line were confusions and frustrations and life of despair, all of these things. And also there was, in my search, there was this line of, there was this invisible line, I should say, and below this invisible line was life of frustration, life of confusion, life of despair, so on and so forth. And this line, this invisible line, is drawn automatically when you lack the knowledge of the rules in engagement. There are rules of engagement on this earth, and when you don't have that knowledge, you are automatically behind that line. It's almost like you're going to play football and no one has explained to you what these rules of engagement are. You will constantly be below what's called a good player or a good team, so on and so forth. So there were rules, or there are rules of engagement on this earth. And the people that I felt like they've gone ahead of us were using this knowledge to sort of control and manipulate people that were underneath the line, the invisible line. And for me, it was so frustrating. It was frustrating because I felt in myself that I was perishing, and perishing because I lack the knowledge. And And for me, it was frustrating. It was so frustrating because I didn't see myself any different to the people that I felt that they have gone ahead of me. And for me personally, this is where the drive or the quest of quenching my thirst, and for me this is where the drive and the quest of quenching my thirst really started. So then I went on to search and search and search. And in the searching, this is where I found out that these expectations that perhaps we have imposed on ourselves was not necessarily in line with what the scriptures were saying. And it was more so of a man-made translations of what they thought the scriptures were saying. And it almost felt like these expectations or these myths and traditions that perhaps we may say it doesn't add up came, or yes, it came, almost like it came as a distraction. It came as a distraction to distract us from the core understanding, the rules of engagement, or the understanding of the spiritual principles and the spiritual keys of this earth, because we're so consumed about meeting these man-made expectations. We're so concerned about keeping up with appearances. We're so concerned about pleasing people. We're so concerned about ticking boxes. We're so concerned about what our outer man looks like, as opposed to what our inner man needed. And I call it beautiful distraction, not because they're beautiful because we all at some point on this journey called life slip into it because it's a lot easier to slip into it. And we're talking about depressions and how to deal with these emotions and what triggers these emotions in the first place. And I genuinely believe that is because we're not, or our inner man is not centered, or it's not aligned with the manufacturer. And this is what these beautiful distraction that surrounds us, or some of us, we just found ourselves in the middle of it, and this is what it does to us. It drives us to depression. These beautiful distraction, distract us from being linked and being connected to the manufacturer. And as a result of not being connected to the manufacturer, we find then ourselves running our own fuel in this body, and obviously leading to all of these unmanageable emotions, i.e. such as depression, so on and so forth, because there's a missing link. There is a missing link, because we think that all there is to life is the life that we're living. So if you have that sort of mindset or that sort of notion, you think that it has come to the end of the road. It has come to the end of the road. Yeah, so there's a disconnection between what it means to be a human being well, no, sorry, there's a disconnection between what it means to be a spiritual being having a human experience. There's a disconnection between your purpose of living, and so and we're more connected to this beautiful distraction that have an expiry date. These distractions that do not last, they're not eternal. You know, I mean, some of these confusion that came up sort of in the 21st century is, you know, just to give you an example of these, or what I mean by these man-made expectations that expire. It's this whole thing about who a man is and who a woman is, the whole conflict between these roles. And because these roles were originally defined by a man, and time has changed, these things are changing as well. But then it goes back to what I said in the beginning of this podcast, that anything that is outside of God does not last. It doesn't stand, or it doesn't stand. It doesn't stand, and it doesn't stand because it hasn't got that principle pillars that holds it. And we all ought to refer back to the manual. And in this beautiful distraction, so I'm guessing what I'm asking all of us to do is to really sit down and search within ourselves and attempt to answer these questions that we proposed at the beginning of this podcast, in regards to answering the questions of who we are, what we're doing, you know, why we've been chosen to be here at a certain time, and the various roles that we play in our lives, you know. And the reason why I'm asking us to do that, because in your searching, in your meditation, you would find out that their idea of Christianity, or what it means to be a Christian, or the principles, the spiritual principles and the spiritual keys, let me put it this way. Let me say this. In your search and in your meditation, you would find out that there are treasure. It's almost like a treasure, okay, that it's a treasure. You find out that in the scope of what it means to be a Christian, right, lays a secret principles and secret keys. These are all spiritual principles and keys that has been hidden from us, to ensure that some of us are still below that invisible line and still living that life, the circle of life of despair, the circle of life of frustration, the circle of life of disappointment, the circle life of life of despair. And, you know, and these principles that are found in Christianity are hidden from us, and they're hidden from us for a reason. They're hidden from us for a purpose. And those who know about these, or those who have attained these knowledge, will